Last few hours we've just been trying to deal with what needs to be worked through to make the meeting work well for today, and there's always last minute things. So warm welcome to our members of the public, to our staff, to our media, to our members who are here. And we've got apologies from Councillor Cashmore, Crum, Councillor Lee and Sir John. We've got lateness from member Taipari and not Councillor Quacks because he's here, and early departure Councillor Filipaina. So I'll move that if someone would like to second that. Thank you. Councillor Penrose. All those in favour please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Any particular declarations of interest on any of the items? If anything strikes you, please let me know. Confirmation of minutes. I'll move the minutes of the meeting of the 14th of May. Councillor Darby, you happy to second? I'll put that. All those in favour please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. There are no petitions, but public input has got a little bit complicated. Councillor Casey.
Madam Chair, could you possibly make a statement with regard to the Three Kings Land Exchange?
Can I get to that? I'm just going to get to that. I just want to work through until we get to the into the body of the meeting, and then I'm going to talk about what we're moving around and why. So if I can just do that, I'm getting round to it. So, sorry, I've lost my place now. No petitions. Public input. We've had a request from Ben Ross, who's in our agenda paper here, just talking with Ben, his presentation, which I just have to acknowledge Ben for the extraordinary work that he's doing out there in the community as a sort of planning advocate. We were just a little bit worried that Ben is currently kind of involved down the road with the unitary plan mediation, and there was quite a lot of crossover between the presentation, the possible discussion that may arise from the mediation, which is a confidential process to the panel. We're not involved, you know, as elected members in that, and the advice we had was that could well compromise Ben and the panel around the mediation. So thank you, Ben, for understanding the complexity of that. We had a public input request from Fletcher Residential and also Gary Bryant with regard to the Three Kings Land Exchange, but because this whole process is now going to go forward to a full public consultation, we felt it's much better for those parties to participate in that public process. But after our workshop, I talked to the staff because the workshop was pretty free and frank. That occurred to me that there was nothing that we discussed at the workshop or that came up that we couldn't sensibly hold in public. So I've made the decision that we'll hold the Three Kings discussion in public. I hope everyone's comfortable with that. We don't need to move any recommendations along that line, so we'll just deal with it after item 16. We'll go straight into the Three Kings item. Otherwise, everything is pretty much just as it is on the agenda, and we'll move through it. So first, and we've got Vernon will speak to our local board input briefly. So we'll go to public input, and I'd just like to warmly welcome Maria on behalf of our, and Sarah, Southern Gateway Consortium. Lovely to see you.
Good morning, thank you. We won't take up too much of your time this morning. We're here for the Southern Gateway Consortium, which is the item relating to the item 12 of your agenda, which is Private Plan Change 35, which is seeking to rezone land to enable development for industrial purposes just off Puanui Road. And that is currently before you for a request to extend time for 2 years. Under the RMA, there's a 2-year time limit between notification of a plan change and when council needs to issue its decision. That would require a decision by 19 July. And the officer's recommendation is set out in the agenda is that the extension be granted. The structure plan process currently underway has resulted in delays. The structure plan which is occurring is for the entire peninsula, and the Plan Change 35 is just one small area that is part of that. And so a number of complexities have arisen, but we just wanted to make it clear that the complexity that's arisen is in relation to the issues on the broader peninsula rather than on our particular site. We think the extension of time should be granted because the consortium has undertaken extensive consultation with submitters, and no one would be adversely affected by the extension for a further 2 years. To the contrary, the interests of the consortium and submitters who have engaged with to date would be adversely affected if it was not granted. Extensive work has been carried out to address the effects of Plan Change 35, and this has assisted Council in better assessing and responding to the environmental effects, not only of the plan change, but for the broader structure plan area. The lack of hearing and subsequent decision on Plan Change 35 has not been caused by unreasonable delays by the consortium, but rather this broader work on the wider peninsula, which all parties and stakeholders have been involved in. So we would urge you to agree with the officer's recommendation and grant the extension to 19 July 2017. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, thanks Maria. Any questions? Councillor Penrose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I'm happy to move that they be thanked, and I'll talk to the item when it comes up.
Brilliant. You move that they'll be thanked. Seconded, Councillor Darby. No other questions? I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. So now we did have some other local board requests to speak to the SHA issues, but we might cover that once we get to the SHA item. So at the moment from Waitemata, Vernon, if I can invite you forward. So I have talked with Vernon, and we're, as you'll all be aware, having read your agendas in detail, I'm sure the item on QE2 Square simply relates to the plan change. Plan change, accept or reject. There's been a lot of discussion around the open space issue, the exchange of open space, the urban design issues. We need to be really clear that's not on the table for today. There's a workshop that Councillor Darby will be chairing in my absence in the next 2 weeks that will be held in partnership with the Waitemata Local Board to discuss the open space issues, to discuss the temporary open space that will be required whilst the construction takes place in this area, and the integration of that open space with the city centre master plan, the downtown plan, the waterfront plan and all the other related plans. So Vernon, we've got in our report the feedback from the local board, which is accepting of the plan change, and on behalf of the local board, if you can speak to that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and for the opportunity to speak to the meeting today. As Councillor Holst has pointed out, you do in fact have our written feedback, which goes into some detail about the plan change itself as well as beyond and the broader considerations. So we please urge you to have a read of that, and we will continue appearing. I will continue appearing on behalf of the board as the process goes on. So broadly, the local board does support the private plan change request, going through the statutory process so that submissions may be heard through the plan change process. Of course, we do not support the private plan change having immediate legal effect. It should go through a full hearings process. I can say on behalf of the board, the decisions around the area, around the square, and what will happen with the square itself for also any replacement spaces has attracted intense public interest. It's one of the things that in the time I've been elected, I've had more comments and correspondence with the public than pretty much anything else. So a very significant issue. So beyond that, all I would say is just to remind the committee of its resolution of 11 September 2014, AUC 2014-111, which mentions that the full proceeds from the sale or lease of the square goes to at least 2 of 3 suggested open spaces, and I'm happy to take any questions further to that.
You said you'd be succinct, and you certainly were, Vernon. Thank you. We could learn some lessons from that. Questions? Councillor Casey.
A little bit more about the options that you've looked at?
Well, the options we understand, so from the resolution, AUC 2014-111, Part C, agree that the proceeds from the sale or lease part of Queen Elizabeth Square be reinvested in the delivery of at least 2 of 3 identified potential alternative public spaces along the downtown waterfront. And the local board has shown an interest particularly in the Admiralty Steps area as a possible alternative. Of course, the ideal would be that there would be, a sunny, sheltered, open space provided somewhere within the area, actually under precinct's control. But if that's not possible, and it doesn't appear to be, then a waterfront space is something we'd be amenable to. And I'd just note again that, of course, the resolution seems to be clear and unambiguous that the full proceeds are to be applied to that purpose, not the net.
So I urge councillors to please attend the workshop with the Waitemata Local Board where this will be discussed at length and with detail. So Vernon, thank you very much.
Sorry, have we got copies of those resolutions or on the board?
It's in our, the board feedback is in our pack and our resolutions are online.
193.
So this is the meeting of 11th September 2014, AUC 2014-111.
Remember it
Yep.
well.
So we remember what we decided, or we should. Councillor Fletcher?
Madam Chair, I wonder if you'll indulge me while we have Vernon here.
I just need to be really clear, councillor. I'm now on instruction after our last governing body meeting where councillors made long speeches about our need to be concise, focus on the issue. The issue here is to accept or reject the plan change, the workshop on public spaces, the exchange of public spaces, and the precinct development will be had at the workshop.
Well, let me be concise in my question and then you can rule it out of order if you choose. Should there be light rail, should it stop at Quay Street going down Queen Street, or would the local board want it to see a stop at Custom Street?
And
should it go
Councillor,
past Britomart?
That issue's been raised and the staff are preparing information on that for the workshop. That's for the workshop. It certainly isn't for discussion now. So Vernon, thank you.
No, Madam Chair.
No, councillors,
Madam Chair, I asked a question about the resolutions,
Yep.
and they
Councillor?
don't seem to be on that. They're not
No.
resolutions, they're just summaries.
So
So
we're-
he mentioned resolutions. Are the
Done. I've quoted the
Councillors,
number of the resolution.
we need to be really clear, and I can see this is going to be a mission following on from the issue at hand today is to accept or reject the plan change. That is nothing to do with our recommendations on the sale of the land, nothing to do with the sale and purchase agreement, nothing to do with the replacement public space. Councillor, come to the workshop. Councillor Walker?
Sure. Is the workshop?
No, Madam Chair.
not
Madam Chair,
fair.
the submitter said that he had the copies of the resolutions. He's got them there.
Councillor,
Can I have a look at them? That's what I
Councillor,
was
you
saying.
can.
Have some data
They're
on
on,
the
It'll be on the M drive.
they're online and they are not relevant to this particular agenda item.
I will
So we
email
need
the
to-
councillor
we
the
do-
relevant
Why do you
resolution.
mention them?
Well, councillor,
can
okay,
mention
hang
one
on, we
line.
just need to take a deep breath. I can see we're heading for a grumpy meeting. Councillor Vernon mentioned them because he's the local board representative. They're a side issue. They're not relevant to the discussion
why I want
today.
local board view.
And councillors, we can do this two ways. We can do this focused and clear as we undertook at the last governing body that we would be, or we can be our usual selves and take 10 hours. I'm going to say the recommendation I will move the recommendation that we thank Vernon.
I'll second it.
And seconded by councillor Cooper. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. I can see we're going to have full representation at that workshop, and I certainly hope we do.
Through you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
I just had a question. Is that workshop going to be public?
Oh, no, councillor.
Shops aren't public.
Councillor, this is our opportunity to have that really
It's a secret
free and-
workshop, Wayne.
No,
Sure.
councillors,
Thank
for
you, Madam
those of
Chair.
us,
Councillors.
Thank
for
you.
those of us that attend all of the workshops,
Vernon.
having this workshop together with the local board, it gives us a chance to talk about some before anyone writes down yet another secret meeting, it would be quite unacceptable for councillors and the local board and our staff to discuss the sale and purchase of pieces of very expensive land in downtown with the public there? What are we going to do with the ratepayers' chequebook? Write open cheque for private landowners? I don't think that's wise. Our fiduciary duty, and I'm sure that there are some councillors who have an awful lot to say about how we can save money. The headlines, council interested in purchasing piece of land will treble the price. Would we have that meeting in public? No.
The matron's in
So,
charge.
let's move on.
Should have been a school teacher.
Shall I flick some water at him?
I tell you what, I'll get.
Calm him down
Remember
now.
whipping.
Well,
You don't want the whipping process to start. It could be ugly. So let's
sounds-
move on.
is that a
to-
threat or a promise, Madam Chair?
Depends what your preferences are.
leave your
Councillor. I'm
fetishes
sure they
at
can
home,
be
councillor.
incorporated. We move on to
Might have-
extraordinary
we'd have to
business.
employ a staff
There is
member.
none. There's no extraordinary business. Notices of motion. There are none.